Hello and welcome back to my cozy corner of YouTube. Today we're going to be doing something a little bit different. I don't have any projects or yarn to show you because everybody in my family's had the COVID and I think I'm getting it. And I just haven't had time to work on anything, to be quite honest with you, nor have I had the brain power to do anything. Remember, I've talked about this before, I am a next step procrastinator and crocheter, and that's pretty much where I am in a lot of projects, and so they're just kind of hanging out in their project bags right now. But if you've followed this channel for a while, you may remember seeing this lovely book. Inside of here is stuff about knitting and crochet. It's a book that has channels in it and the people's real name because I like to have that whole community thing here. But also in here is a list of video ideas and content that I want to create and things I want to talk about with you. And today we're going to finally start chipping away at that list. And our topic of choice today is cringe culture in our yarn world. So this all really started for me a couple of years ago. Around the time I started this channel, we began working with the youth at our local church. We started going to this new church, and we have two boys ourselves who are teenagers. One's going to be a senior this year, and we've homeschooled them for many years. So being put with these kids who are out in the world, you begin hearing all these slang words and phrases that they're using, and a lot of them are very odd, and they do not have the same context as what we may remember. And one of the ones that kept coming up for me was this phrase of cringeworthy or cringe in general. And I remember thinking, like, what my own context of that word is. So from my own life experiences, for me, that word is something that is so horrendous or so grotesque that it makes me shield my eyes or close my eyes or look away and get that reflex that we all know of come up. And I remember asking the kids who are using it, like, why are we using that towards someone or something? That's rude. We should not be doing that. And it kind of made me think about other situations, and it made me think about the people who are afraid to share their projects, or people who are even apologizing about the yarn that they use. And honestly, it made me want to dig deeper into this topic and ask the question, what is cringe culture in the yarn world, and how much this idea of cringe has infiltrated our communities? So, what is cringe culture? Basically, it's a culture tendency that likes to mock, belittle, berate, shame, poke fun, insert whatever word you want to here, of people or things that they deem as awkward, uncool, unnecessary, embarrassing, or just against the current social norms. In the fiber arts world, in our communities, I try to think of different contexts to share with you for this sit down and chat. And what came to mind are the people who are getting teased possibly for having a project with them at all times, like myself. I have been the receiver of those awkward glances, and you can see people lean over like, why did she bring that project with her? Why is she knitting here? And I know how that feels. Or maybe it's the ever so common, you like grandma hobbies? Because I know we've all gotten that one before. Or maybe it is someone being judged for a yarn that they're using. Or maybe it's someone who has been judged for posting a project on social media and having a mob of people swarm their comment section with unsolicited advice on their yarn choice, their color choices, how their stitches are made incorrectly, or just general belittling. And trust me, let me just take a moment here to say I fully understand the need for constructive criticism at its time. But it is a different word than unsolicited advice. And I think our world has combined those meanings and assumes that it's one word. They are two different things. And I think we need to relearn what those words mean and utilize them in our society. Trust me when I say I see it constantly in various groups that I admin or moderate online. It has gotten out of control. And here's the thing. What's considered cringe now will shift over time. And it's also going to vary between different countries and different cultures because we're all not the same people. And that is okay. Acrylic yarn used to be seen as this bottom of the barrel kind of yarn in a way. There was this whole time frame when independent yarn stores were very snobbery when it came to someone coming in to crochet or someone coming in to buy acrylic yarn. But the truth is, acrylic yarn is not only affordable, it's readily accessible everywhere, and for many of us, it's how we started our knitting and crochet journeys. It's what we had around us, and it's what got us to where we are. But there used to be, and there somewhat still is, this whole connotation that acrylic yarn is what's used to learn with because it's trash. But that's not the case. We're still seeing people sometimes throw the snobbery up with, you should be using natural fibers if you're serious about your craft. And we're still seeing the 100% organickers coming at the new knitter and crocheter in these groups with, that is so bad for the environment. But that also can flip around to the other way, you know? The truth is, both acrylic and natural fibers all have their place. And it should not be considered shameful to choose one or the other. Now, granted, some fibers work better for some things opposed to others. Like you don't want to make a hot pad or oven mitt out of 100% acrylic. You're going to melt your project to your hand. It's not going to be pretty. But, that's not the same thing. There should not be shame in how you craft. Needle arts is a word that we use in our communities. But it's an umbrella term. It doesn't just specifically represent knitting and crochet. It represents tatting, embroidery, cross stitch, and other yarn and yarn-like string crafts. Or how about the word wool? This is going to probably cause a little debate because here in the United States, we use the word wool to describe natural fibers that is made out of 100% wool. That is a wool yarn. But in other countries, like Europe, for instance, our friends over the pond, hello friends over the pond, they use the word wool as an umbrella term for yarn in general. So it's 100% wool, or it could be 100% acrylic. Both of those are considered wools that you use for knitting and crochet. Does it make our over-the-ponder friends wrong? No. Does it make it cringeworthy that they're using it improperly? No. And if we really want to ruffle some feathers, we can talk about the word knitting and crochet because here in the United States, those are two different crafts. There's so many memes that I've seen over the years signifying how different they are. But in some countries, my friends, they are the same word used for both crafts. Russia, and there's a couple other countries, use the same word to cover both. I think it's all considered knitting in some places. And then in some other countries, there's just a slight modifier that distinguishes a knitting project versus a crochet project. Because if you look up the words to define them, both of them are using yarn, making loops to create something. one just uses 2 needles and one uses 1 hook. But I'm pretty sure if you walked up to a crocheter here in the United States and be like, what you knitting? Or go into a yarn store to like a table of knitters and asking what you're crocheting, they're going to take you out back and bust your kneecaps. I mean, it's just the way it is here. Then if you really want to spark the fire and poke the bear, we can talk about the word nail binding. So the word nail binding, and I'm going to read it straight from my notes, is an ancient textile art similar to knitting. However, it only uses a single needle, not a hook, but a needle and short lengths of yarn to create a durable, thick, and wind-tight fabric that does not unravel. That is so cringe. No, it's not. Seriously though, it's really amazing. I'm going to share some links down below so you can look into it. But it just goes to show you how that kind of concept blurs the lines from knitting 2 needles versus crochet single hook needle. And how we've brought in that cringe concept to cover people who vary in opinion on that on us, even though it's culturally different. You know? So have you ever had someone correct your terminology or your yarn choice that made you feel small or belittled? I know I have. And if you have, I'm so sorry that happened to you. And I would love for you to talk about it in the comments, because I think when we talk about these things, it brings in a community aspect that other people realize that they've experienced that too, and it helps strengthen our bond, because we often feel like we're singled out, but the reality is these things happen to all of us, and there's community in that. So where did this all come from? Remember it most around the early 2000s, Y2K, the time of the interwebs. Back when internet culture was really exploding and expanding, cringe culture was really starting to creep into every community. There was this whole movement of channels that popped up out of nowhere that had these whole compilations or gathered videos of all these things that the creator deemed as cringe. I didn't really think about it at that time, but being around these kids made me think about when I really started noticing it even back then. And people were being mocked for their hobbies. They were being mocked for enjoying themselves as far as what they like to collect or what they're into. The word nerd, I think, became like really more prevalent in the 80s through 2000s. And nerdiness was kind of seemed as something odd. And you don't want to be a nerd. That would be very uncool. In the fiber world, crochet clothing was kind of being seen around that time as nerdy or uncool or cringe, opposed to in the 60s and 70s when it was everywhere. Self-made sweaters were considered old-fashioned, embarrassing. Poor Ron Weasley. I think he would have a thing or two to say about that. And of course, the grandma hobby was really pushed out there into the world for knitters and crocheters. But then in 2020, there was this shift. There was a shutdown, and we entered into a whole new phase of life. Yarn crafts became mainstream. They were on TikTok, they were on Instagram, they were in fashion runways. I remember seeing all the runway shows with crocheted items and thinking like, what is happening? When did this shift begin? And I'm here for it. But that visibleness of everything also creates a different kind of cringe. Cringe didn't go away, it just shifted. And it just shifted a little bit to how we perceive things. Now, there's this added layer of aesthetic appropriate. With social media, and especially Instagram and TikTok, everything has to be camera ready at all times. Everything is expected to be polished and look professional. Fast fashion, forward, Instagram ready, and instead of being valued for the heart and the time invested in the item, we've lost the creativity behind it and we only see the surface level. I think about the whole shift from bold, colorful creations to this grayish time that we are in our world. And I love a good white like the rest of us. I love it, makes things look nice, but you can also see I love color. And I think a lot of people have become, and society is pushing for this grayish, everything the same, minimalistic, lose yourself kind of mentality, and it scares me. The reality is perfection is a facade. And to be honest with you, I fall guilty of this a lot. One of my downfalls is self-comparing to people. It's something that I've been working on for years. And I know how demotivating that is and how limiting that is to your soul and to your spirit and to your creativity. Sometimes I still catch myself wanting to fix things, and I do. I will drop down and fix a stitch, or I will tink back a little bit, but I no longer feel the urge to rip out rows and rows of something, losing that creativity time just so I can show it on social media. We all see those perfectly blocked sweaters and the perfectly mosaic knitted and crocheted items on social media, and we think, wow, if I can only get that good to make that. How crazy of a concept is that? Those images that we see trick us and trick others into thinking that that maker is perfect. Their knitting is perfect. Their crochet is perfect. They have this perfect life. I want that. But the truth is, again, perfection is a facade. Every single knitter and crocheter makes mistakes. Every single one of us has dropped stitches. Every single one of us has seams that don't line up perfectly. Every one of us has made something flat that has a little bit of waves in it. And honestly, that is what makes it perfect, because that makes it human. It makes it special to each of us. It's part of our journey in our craft. It's that little bump in the road that we've used to either grow stronger or we've let it destroy our creativity. If you look at this Sophie's universe behind me, you would think that it looks pretty amazing. There's not that many visual mistakes anywhere on this thing, but there are so many in this blanket that it's not even funny. There are so many times that I would crochet a row and then 6 rows later have to catch on to a front post that I did not make at all. I just completely forgot it. And so what I did was just got a piece of that yarn and I did a standing front post, and I would just weave the yarn in opposite directions and then carry on, because I was not going to rip out 4 to 6 rows when I got to like a row 90 of this thing. That is too much time wasted in my life that I can be using it on something else. But it still has that look of perfection. But it's not. I made the choice to fix it, tweak it, weave in my ends, and carry on. It's those things and those moments that's what makes it ours. No one else is going to have those same boo-boos. They're not going to have those same interruptions. But there's memories with those, because a lot of those times are when I was taking care of my kids, or when I was working on it as I was playing a game with my kids. And that's something I don't want to give up. I don't want to lose those memories. I talk about occasionally on this channel, which I plan on talking about more, is my faith, because I've been in a conviction for that, for not talking about it that much on my channel. And from my Christian perspective, it reminds me that only God is perfect. And He doesn't call me to be perfect. He doesn't call me to have flawless stitches. He calls me to create with joy. And He calls me to use my gifts and use those to bless others with kindness. For me, my faith is the equation of faith equals kindness to others, love of God, regardless of our differences. My faith makes it so I can breathe easier and just go back in and stick those front posts in, weave in my ends, and move on. It allows me to let go of the pressure of having this perfectly color coordinated Instagram reel where all the cute photos line up. I don't even think I've posted in a while on mine. It causes me to let go of this pressure to measure up to this impossible standard that I cannot have in my life. It doesn't make me impenetrable though. I still worry about staying up on my channel so YouTube doesn't hate me and doesn't push out my content, but it brings me peace and it lightens the stress of that so that I don't have those fears when I'm spending time with my family. I focus on my family. It gives me peace about the comparison that I used to have. I no longer think, wow, they're doing so much better on their channel than I am. I stink. I mean, I probably do, but I don't deal with that as much anymore. It's something that I struggled in the past, but it's something that I'm really working to let go of completely because my channel is me. My channel is a reflection of me. My channel is me to you. It's how I want to share kindness and joy and inspiration with you. I think we need to talk about when cringe worthy or cringe turns into cancel. Sometimes a designer may put out a quirky or unusual pattern. People tend to mock it. People pile on, and then you have this mob mentality bursting at the seams, going after people, calling them out for their style, for their pricing, or even for things outside of their work, their family, their personal life. Or they may bash a pattern because it may make them think of something else. I was so blown away by the controversy of the Stephen West shawl from years ago that I frogged my project, and it is still in its bag on this yarn tree, and I haven't been able to touch it. And there's videos about that on this channel if you're interested. But that's where cancel culture and cringe culture begin to slide into one another. What might begin with someone thinking something is cringe can quickly turn into something much harsher. Some of y'all may not remember the controversies that happened a couple of years ago, mainly in the knitting communities. There were these constant lines drawn, and either you were on one side or you were on the other side. And it was not really pretty to be on either side. And that pushed a lot of people from their yarn. A lot of people did not knit or crochet as much. I know I didn't. It was really hard for me to pick up my hooks and needles because the community I loved had been hurt so badly by each other. And it pushed a lot of people away from the forums and from the groups that we had that were supposed to be this place where we can all come together and share a love and passion of yarn. The idea even came around that if you make something from a canceled designer, then you were guilty by association. And it's just crazy because many of us have been following people from the dawn of time, and not all of us stay up into who's canceled and who's not canceled. There's other things to me from my life that are more important, like my family. And it was almost as if that even if you had a pattern or you had a yarn created by someone that was canceled, it would be a very cringe of you to use that because that person is no longer welcomed in our spaces, our communities. I just don't get it. The ability to be respectful to other people who had different opinions than us got lost somewhere. It was seen as cringe to talk, to follow, to be nice to someone who had different opinions to you. I'm not going to dwell on all the politics. I'm not going to dwell on the past of that stuff. I just wanted to kind of talk about it and bring it to life. I ask that in my comments you do the same. But it's something that I made an active choice to be distanced from because I didn't want that negativity in my life. Before long, if we continue down that road, it no longer becomes about the pattern or the thing, but it becomes about the individual person. And it's all about tearing down people, and it's all about going after people. I've seen it over and over and over in this community and many others. I'm sure you have too. And it's at that point that it's no longer safe for any of us because we're all going to be varied in opinions and ideologies in each other. No one's going to be exactly the same. So who is right? Who is wrong? Who is safe? Who is unsafe for ridicule? It goes from being a little slight grandma joke to being totally going after someone and internet bullying another person. And that's not okay. It is affecting every age and demographic out there. It's really affecting our youth, and youth are really getting affected by this in really bad and negative ways, and it has to stop. We as adults have to set examples. And while we're talking about cringe, we cannot skip over cringe around stashes and consumption. Some people like to mock large stashes. Some say it's wasteful or it's hoarding. Others like to judge small stashes, saying that they are not a real knitter or crocheter because they do not have a yarn stash or because they do not really love their yarn. I completely understand the need for conservation and being mindful of our planet. We are a family that likes to recycle. But overconsumption is something that we should all be aware of. Don't get me wrong. But here's the thing. We don't really know the whole story behind each other's stash. We don't know how long it took that person to accumulate that or where that person got that yarn from. A lot of that yarn could have donated to them from a loved one who knitted or crocheted and left it to them. And there is this connection to that person through that stash. And sometimes it's hard to pare that down. Or some of us can be, like myself, someone who has always bought yarn as a memory. I don't really buy souvenirs. I would seek out yarn stores and I would buy a yarn to memorialize or remember that trip or that situation or that event. And that's how most of this stuff come about around me. Or it could have been from, things like yarn stores closing down. Maybe that was a huge community and a huge portion of their life. And so when that yarn store closed down, they did, like myself, go in and buy some of that yarn because you want to hold on to that as long as you can. You want to pick up that yarn later in life, knit with it or crochet with it and relive and have all those memories and those good times and those smiles and those knitters and crocheters who were a part of that, who are no longer on this earth, come to your mind and to your heart. We lost the human aspect of just being kind. I've pared down my stash a lot over the past. Compared to other YouTube creators, I have a lot of yarn, but compared to some other ones, I don't have a lot of yarn. And it goes to show you that stash size is not a one size fits all. Not everyone's story is the same. You will have people who will go out and continue to buy yarn even though they have a bunch of yarn. It is what it is. Or you can have people like me in the past who maybe were that way, but maybe had a life change or something happened in their life. For me, it was seeing the health of my mother-in-law decline that made me realize that, I have a lot of really nice yarn. I just need to enjoy it and I need to slow down my life. I need to be more mindful in my purchases, and that's what I've been doing over the years. But either way, either side or either person you are, it is okay. So why all this matters to me and why I wanted to have this discussion today was community should be about joy. It should be about creativity, and it should be about connection. We don't need to buy into cringe culture. It's an option. It's a choice. If you are someone who constantly looks for negativity, you're going to find negativity in everything that you do. If you're someone who is always trying to see the brighter side and to live a life of joy, you're going to see those in glimpses and moments here and there that are going to bring you joy. We don't have to tear each other down to have a joyful knitting and crochet life. If we let cringe culture seep into our craft, it's going to take over. It's going to spread. It's going to kill creativity. It's going to silence people. And it's going to make people unavailable and unable to make things with joy. I truly believe that God encourages to encourage one another, to love on one another. In Hebrews 10:24, it says, spur up one another on toward love and good deeds. And I think that applies to our craft as well. In our stitches and our shares and in our words to each other, we should show kindness and love to one another. If we're all making the same trendy projects and using the same color yarn and thriving for the same picture perfect outcome, this craft would be boring. It will lose its soul. We will lose our individuality. And what would be the point of that? There would be none. Fiber arts thrives on creativity, and creativity does need to have a safe space to bloom in. Cringe culture and cancel culture rob us of that. They take it away and they blur the lines of what's right and wrong. They rob us of the act of sharing and of the act of caring for each other out of being worried that we would be found cringe in someone else's eyes. And we were not created to be perfect. We were not created to be flawless. And we don't need to pretend to be happy. Every wonky stitch, every really strange looking project like this thing that I made many years ago for my mother-in-law, I don't even know what this is, has meaning and it has a purpose and it has a story. It's our part as the storytellers and as the makers to share that with others. It's still beautiful because you made it. You put your creativity, your time, your love, your heart, your soul, and your gift into it. So I just ask that we choose encouragement over criticism, that we begin to celebrate every project and every maker, regardless if it's perfect or if it's full of mistakes, that we learn to find joy again in our makes, that we don't have to feel the pressure of using gray or grayish, but we feel the joy of picking out that neon color and making it stand out. That we find joy of making things from our stash, that what we already own, that we don't feel this pressure to go out and buy something new so we can match the 100 of other projects that have made it. That we can find our individuality in our makes again. And that we lose this feeling of looking for cringe things in each other and just celebrate each other and each other's creativeness and build a community off of that so we can be better stewards and better examples to the generations to come. I would love to hear from you. Have you ever felt hesitant to share because you're worried that you may be seen as making or being someone who is cringe? Are you worried about ridicule and how has it affected your crafty processes? How has it kept you from maybe showing your project and talking about your project? Let's have these conversations in the comments and let's remind each other that joy matters just as much and more than anyone else's judgment. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you have a wonderful week. Hugs, love, and all the yarny fluff. Bye.